Oh, welcome, Magic Makers. Today, I have such a great episode for you. All right. So, I usually don't try to date my podcast, but it's the end of the year. And so it's our last podcast of this year. And I feel like these what I'm about to talk about is pretty much evergreen. So if you're listening to this in July, it still will have an impact on you. So I want to talk about the 23 myths of fitness that we must leave in 2023. And in this time of year, many of us are starting to say to ourselves, all right, this is the year I'm going to, right, insert whatever it is that you're going to do, eat healthier, go to the gym more regularly, sleep better, blah, blah, blah. So let's just dive into maybe some of the myths that you might be leaning into, some of the things that you're like, oh, I thought that was true. And I want to make sure that you walk into 2024 with some great advice, some great information that you can start to really build some strong habits, build some strong routines that by the end of 2024, you'll be like, hey, girl, look at me. I crushed it. All right. So where do we start? I'm going to start with cardio. Cardio is one of those things that everyone's like, I must do cardio to lose weight. And I get that. You get on that treadmill, you get on that elliptical, you get on that bike and soul cycle, and you're just sweating. It just feels so freaking good. And you're like, I have must burn 4 million calories and I have probably dropped 400 pounds. However, cardio is important, but there's a balance, right? And one of the biggest things that I tell people, especially about cardio, is that I want you to think about it. Imagine a graph, all right? So imagine a graph, and we have cardio going down the left-hand side, and then we have hunger going along the right-hand side. As my cardio increases, my hunger increases. And maybe you've experienced that, and for many people, it's a tipping point because, I would love to give you this blanket number, like 30 minutes, girlfriend. And maybe for you, you're that person who can go for miles and miles and miles. And 30 minutes, you're like, yeah, my hunger still feels okay. And maybe it's at that 1 hour mark that your hunger is like, hey, girl, feed me whatever's not nailed down in that fridge. And so for many people, it is a great way to get heart health. It's a good way to burn calories, but it's not the best way to do it. Building muscle is what's going to boost the metabolism, and that's what's going to give us that long-term weight loss. It's also going to make us feel a little smaller, right? We're going to be shrinking instead of just focusing on, does that scale go down? So what's the best way for me to focus on? Think about something about 50-ish minutes in zone 2. And that's where, my heart rate's getting up there, but I'm not exactly crushing it. I could hold a conversation with a friend, right? So you feel sweaty, but you're not exerting yourself. Yet, like I said, having that conversation, you're consistently able to hit that heart rate range without being like, I must work really hard in order to get there. Also, building in some plyometric exercises. So think about and I'm not saying, 400 burpees, because I hate burpees. And if you ever work with me, if I've ever programmed a burpee, it's probably like once every 3 years. But plyometrics could be box jumps, it could be jumping rope, it could be squat thrust, things like that give you kind of like a quick burst of energy, a powerful move, to help you kind of keep that neuromuscular conditioning and that bone strength going. And then for those higher intensity, I know some of my people out there, you've been like, I must do my HIIT, I have to. I'd say, give that about 20-ish minutes a week, right? Getting that heart rate up into that 85, 95 percentile. And then, focusing the bulk of that time in zone 2. But if you're like, I don't have a lot of time, I'd focus purely on that zone 2, getting in that, just acts of daily living as much as you possibly can. The second myth is that you can spot reduce. And I think, many of us have come to Jesus on this one, that it's not possible. Where we gain our weight and where we lose our weight first is purely genetic. For some of us, we can start to say, like, when we start to gain weight, we see it in our butts or our stomach, or, depend. We all know, if we look at the women in our lives, or in our families, we can see where they gain the weight, and we're like, yeah, that's where it's going to happen for me too. And so, in spite of all of those magic creams, those belly busting workouts, it's really challenging just to target fat in one spot. You will lose weight overall. It is possible to really think about, like, for especially us women over 40, many of you are like, well, it's my belly and I really need that belly to go away. For a lot of us, that belly comes down to really embracing a well-rounded approach to fitness and nutrition. And in my belly fat code course, I talk all about what are things we can do to really focus in on making sure we, one, may not get belly fat or get it as bad as we think it is. And then two, how do we kind of focus through in our choices, our codes, and building that consistency to really stop that body fat from really building up in that area based on our hormonal changes. Which leads me into weightlifting. And, it's like I've been lifting since I was in college. And I can't imagine a day that I won't lift weights. And I know that many people here, I teach a lot of different classes and different levels. And I see it. I see people who are like, oh, if I lift higher than 8 pounds, I'm going to get bulky. And I'm like, who the hell is still like spreading this bullshit, right? I wish, if you were to lift weights and get bulky, I wish that that's the case. And so many of my clients are like, I would love to just walk past the weight rack and the weight hop. That's just not the case anymore. Ding dong. That's just not the case. So for women over 40, strength training is paramount, primarily because it helps to, one, stabilize your metabolism, right? The more muscle I have in my body, the more calories I can eat, the more calories I burn just sitting here recording this podcast. Also, it is what helps me to shuttle the sugar around, right? So everyone who's like, I can't have sugar, lift some heavy weights, because your body uses the sugar, aka the glucose, to fuel that muscle. Also, osteoporosis, that is a true thing, especially as our hormones are getting wonky. Estrogen is the driver of osteoporosis because we're not having it in the amounts that our body is used to. So when I start to lift heavy weights, the muscle pulls on the bone, and that's what helps build that nice, strong bone. And, heavy is relative. I always tell people it's the last, say, 2 to 3 reps feel challenging but doable, right? So whatever that rep range is for you, it could be you're lifting 10-pound weights. Great. If the last 3 feel challenging but doable, you're lifting heavy enough. If I can like blow through those last 3 reps, girlfriend, pick up something heavier. And if you're someone who's like brand new to weightlifting, do me a favor, raise your hand. I know that it could be a little intimidating, especially like, I don't know what to do in the gym. That's okay. Raise your hand. There's plenty of us who, our first steps onto the other side of the weight room. But I want us to celebrate our strength. I want you to think about this. Like, let's just talk about strength out in the wild, right? Wild strength. Getting off your toilets, right? How many times have you just, I go to a pharmacist that's also like a health supply store, and you see all of these aids that, these aids that are on the other side of the toilet to help you get off the toilet. How many times do you see people trying to get out of a chair and it's like this, lots of gyrations to get out of the chair? Strength training, right? That's why strength training, whenever I see that, I'm like, all right, girlfriend, I got to keep strength training, because that's just not how I want to go out, right? I don't want to go out that way. Which leads me into this myth. People are like, oh, you can't build muscle over 40. Bull. It's possible to build and maintain muscle provided we have proper nutrition and training. And this is what it's facts. Like, we can't fight facts. This is biology. Your peak strength is up to age 35. So if you're listening to this and you're under 35 and you're not strength training, this is me shaking you by the shoulders and being like, get your booty into the gym. All right. That's me shaking you by the shoulders. Now, if I'm 35 plus and I'm not doing strength training, we're losing 3 to 5% of our muscle every decade. Now, you're probably like, say we're 35 or you're 36. You're probably not going to really notice it until you're 46. And then if you don't do anything about it at 46, you're definitely going to notice it at 56. And here's where it gets, like shit gets real, right? 8% after 65. So from age 65 forward, it's 8% every decade. So it's pretty much double after you hit 65. So if you are now in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, this is my battle cry. Get your shit together now. And again, if you are like, I don't know what to do, girl, let's talk. I want to make sure that no one is like that person who's like, I can't get off the toilet without some help. I want you to be able to get out of a chair. I want you to be able to lift a gallon of damn milk and without help or support. Our bodies are incredible, adaptable machines. And with the right exercise and nutrition plan, we can continue to build strength well into our like 80s and 90s. I think so many of you probably have seen, on the socials, there's a woman by the name of Ernestine. There's another woman, I can't think of her name. Barb. I think she's 70 something. And like, these women didn't start training until their 60s. And now they're like, I look at them, I'm like, okay, you are my role model. Tina Turner, Angela Bassett. Angela Bassett is 60 something years old, and homegirl's got some arms on her. So, there are role models out there that are in their like, 50s that are like proof that like, yeah, you can build and hold muscle. All right, I'm off my soapbox. This is going to be multiple times and be on my soapbox. If you've listened to this podcast before, I get on my tangents. All right. Another myth, I should avoid all fats. We grew up in diet culture. We are the bleeding edge of diet culture. And diet culture, I remember, do you remember those foods, snack wells, right? And it was like the low fat cookies, and they had these lemon cookies that I could like eat a whole damn box of those things in one sitting. But how they just, there are no fat, right? So like, oh, if there's no fat, this is really good for me, right? I must eat it. But we didn't like realize all the crap that they were putting into it to take the fat out to make it taste really good. And so we were taught to fear fat. And it wasn't until I started competing that I really understood. I started to get really down the rabbit hole of nutrition. And I don't know if you know this, but our brains, our cell membranes are made of fat, right? That's what primarily built as the building blocks of our cells and our brain. And that our hormones need fat to be at their optimum, be at work at their best. And so, I don't know if many of you know this, but it's cholesterol so cholesterol, right? Some people are like, oh my God, cholesterol, my cholesterol. So cholesterol is what determines the softness or the rigidity of your hormone of your cells. Like, so softness is like nutrition is able to easily permeate the cell wall or not. And the more cholesterol I have in my body, the harder it is for nutrition to get into the cell wall, versus the lower cholesterol, a lot easier for the nutrition to get into the cell wall. Okay, no one needed a biochemistry exercise right now. But back to this. So many women, because in the 80s, early 90s, no fat, you avoid it, right? You don't even think that putting in fat in your food, other than freaking olive oil. I am on my soapbox again. For the love of God, olive oil is not the only good fat out there. Repeat after me. Olive oil is not the only good fat out there. There are so many other healthy fats that are essential for your health. So here's what I'm going to tell you. The oil aisle in grocery stores are ridiculous now. There's more than like, canola oil and vegetable oil out there. So here's what's a good fat. Any oil, with the exception of, these are the exceptions: vegetable, canola, safflower, and Crisco. Those, and peanut.
Those are the exceptions, those 5 oils. But think nuts, avocados, coconut oil. I know we can go down this rabbit hole about seed oils, not seed oils. I'm going to tell you, I am in the camp of I don't give a shit, especially if like seed oils for me are more about if you're someone who eats a lot of fast foods. But I don't know about you, but sesame oil with Chinese food ain't the same. And if I'm eating that, five meals a day, I'm eating sesame oil, different conversation than a couple times a week, once a week. Right. So, you and I can have that conversation offline, but that's how I feel. Like I'm more of a if it's a sprinkle versus a everyday occurrence. But I'm back. So there's so many good things about fat. The other thing is our skin, all right, especially in our 40s. I don't know about you, if you ever noticed that you are losing moisture. I feel like I have to like literally bathe in body lotion every damn day because my skin just drinks it up. And so that's really helpful. Wrinkles. I don't know. My goal is to be like, how old is she? Like, does she age? That's my goal, with or without skin enhancements. That is my ultimate goal. So the only people who should be really mindful about their good fat consumption are those folks who do not have a gallbladder or have gallbladder issues. And I'm sure your doctor has given you guidance. If they haven't, raise your hand. Let's talk about that. The other myth that I see this all the time is the more you sweat, the more calories you burn. I see it all the time. If there is a puddle of sweat around you at the gym, you're like, yeah, I'm crushing my workout. Ladies, do not be fooled by sweat. Yes, a good sweat session makes you feel like King Kong, right? You're like, woo, I crushed that workout, but it's not the sole measure of workout effectiveness. Here's where we start to focus in on how much progress did I make? Am I lifting heavy weights? Did I get breathless? Did I feel any burning in my muscles? Not just is there a pool of sweat around me once I get off the treadmill or whatever piece of equipment or, lifting, so forth. Sweat does not equate to an intense workout. How many calories you burned or how many fat was burned. There's no measurement in that. Like you can't sit down and like measure like, oh, 3 inches of sweat, that must be 4 million calories. Like it just doesn't work like that. So here's where I want us to start to think about, what sweat does. Sweat just regulates our body's temperature. Most people, our core temperature is 98.6. So as soon as we get to a certain threshold, our body says, ooh, we're starting to get hot. Let's sweat. And by your body sweating, that is starting to lower our core temperature. And so what might surprise you here is that the fitter I am, the less likely I am to start sweating sooner because my body has been trained to be like, oh, okay, yeah, she's working out. We know this. We've been here before. And so it is we get, as we get fitter, we get more of a delay into when we start sweating. And this is from the Journal of Applied Physiology. The same thing comes with those hot workouts. I see them all the time. Come in and do a hot spin class, followed by hot strength training, followed by hot whatever. Sorry, you're not burning more calories. Despite the marketing, you are not burning more calories. You might feel like you're getting a better workout because in the heat, you're going to be a little bit more limber. You're going to have a little bit bigger range of motion. Heat makes you more naturally relaxed. But it is not a better workout to do hot. And if you are doing those hot workouts, make sure you are hydrated because you can really run the risk of being dehydrated because I'm in a hot environment, which is already exertion. And then I'm coupling a workout on top of that. So that is just like a double exertion And I just need to make sure that I am properly hydrated if those are the types of workouts I choose to do. So one of the best ways to work out, to measure your workout intensity, I love it. It's called RPE. It's like the rate of perceived exertion. And 1 is very light. And then 10 is like where you're working at your max. And so here's where you kind of decide like what are the days that you're going to work out. Some days like I didn't get enough sleep. Like, am I going to work out at 10? Probably not. Can I be working out at 10 for 40 minutes? Probably not. So to think about like a 10 is like it's like a full out like sprint. So like, you might be sprinting 1 or 2 minutes and then you're like, whoo, I got to catch my breath, and so forth. So think about that as a way to measure your workout versus like, oh, I had to wring out my Lulus in the tub when I got home from my workout. The next brings us into skipping meals. And skipping meals can lower your metabolism or lead you to overeating later in the day. And I see this a lot with, and this is different from intermittent fasting. So we're going to talk about intermittent fasting a little bit. I'm going to talk about this and then we'll talk about intermittent fasting. So this is literally like, you have those days where, when I worked in corporate, I would go to the office and I would have my breakfast in my bag. And I would sit down at my desk and I had this romanticized that I'm going to be able to sit at my desk and, start working. But Sam comes by my desk and he's like, hey, Kim, you need to hop into this meeting and talk about blah. So I didn't even get a chance to, go heat my water for my oatmeal. And then, so that's 9 o'clock. And then I'm in the meeting for an hour. And then another fire happens, another fire. And the next thing you know, it's 1 o'clock and I haven't eaten anything. So that's not intermittent fasting. My day just blew up in my face. And I know many clients of mine that happens for them. Like their day just like blows up in front of their face. So that is like, so then of course at this point I'm starving. And if it's not nailed down, it's going to my mouth. All right. So that's by, skipping meals. The other is, I know I'm going to a big event at the end of the evening. I'm going out to dinner with my sweetie. I'm going to a Christmas party. I'm going to whatever. I'm not going to eat so that I can eat then. And that's kind of a recipe for disaster happening there. So now let's talk about intermittent fasting. And I hear this a lot, intermittent fasting, especially for menopausal women, perimenopausal women. It's become this big thing like, oh, intermittent fasting, woo, it is going to save you from yourself. Okay, here's what I feel. Intermittent fasting may work for some of you. It's not this one solution, one size fits all solution, right? So here's what I know is that you need to work on a balanced metabolism. For many women over 40, you've been on 10 plus diets. And many of you, your metabolism is like a very fragile state. And so as you start to look at intermittent fasting, you're like, oh, these people are losing weight. At the end of the day, losing weight comes down to a calorie restriction. Am I not losing weight because I'm under eating? Am I not losing weight because I'm eating in a disordered way? Am I not losing weight because I have a unhealthy relationship with food? Am I not losing weight because I'm an overtrainer and an undereater? Am I losing weight because I'm an overeater? Now, when I say overeater, it could be both. It could be I just overeat just a lot of food, or I overeat clean food because I bought into the notion that I need to have 5 meals a day, right? Those are the questions that I ask. And I feel that intermittent fasting, like I said, isn't for one size fits all. I do feel that intermittent fasting has its merits. There are, I think, periods of time for intermittent fasting. I don't think it is a way of life. I feel that it is I'm a big seasonal approach to weight loss. And so I think I need to do another podcast on that one. Um, the seasonal approach is that every 90 days, I'm looking at my nutrition and I'm looking at my workouts and saying what's going on with my life and making changes to the nutrition or the workouts based on what's going on in my life. So, um, what I was able to do, because I want to make sure I back this up with research, is that the JAMA uh, Network Open Journal, they did an analysis about intermittent fasting on women, and they said they did it to women who were doing what was called an alternate day fast. So they ate normal for 5 days and they fasted for two, and so they said there was a statistically significant weight loss of more than 5% in adults who are overweight or obese. Okay, let me be very clear, overweight or obese. And I think many of you listening don't fall into that category, but I just wanted to like make sure I was clear. But they did find that time restricted eating was, they were most successful when they did it for 6 months and then went on to eating something else, which basically they were saying after 6 months, most people experience a weight plateau. So again, like I'm a huge fan of periodization, not only for my workouts, but for my nutrition. Then there was another study, the biological research for nursing. It said that the majority of the short-term studies did in fact lose weight, but not any more than those who are doing other calorie restriction eating plans. So, like I said, if I've found my calorie deficit, right? So I'm making this number up. So if my body, if I know that I can maintain my weight at 2,000 calories, then I'm going to do my best to eat less than 2,000 calories so that my body is in a deficit. So maybe one day I'm eating at 1,500 calories. One day I'm eating at 1,600 calories. One day I'm eating at 1,800 calories, right? But as long as it's below, and I don't want to go too radically below, because when I get too hungry, we all know what happens, right? You lose your stuff. You lose your stuff and when you get too hungry. So that leads me into another thing that people talk about, carbs. Carbs are not bad. And, there's a person on the internet or the interwebs that talks about being a carnivore, right? And eating primarily meats, primarily meats. And then, we have the whole keto thing. Here's the thing. Again, I feel like there is a season. But the thing with carbs is that they are essential for energy. And no one overeats spaghetti squash. No one overeats broccoli, right? We overeat cookies, we overeat cakes, we overeat breads. Those are the things that we have a tendency to overeat. So if we choose the right carbs and we use portion control, they are your friend, right? The other thing I'm going to talk about here is that I do have a lot of ladies who choose a more plant-based life, and that's okay. Here's what I want to drive this point home is that every plant-based protein comes with higher carbs. And so if you're someone who is trying to lose weight, you really need to look at that balance of, having a cup of black beans versus a cup of broccoli. Very different because you're going to have a ton more starchy carbohydrates in that can of black beans than you will in that cup of broccoli. So I want you to start, as you're doing that, start to look at it, and those kind of decisions become a little bit more nuanced, right? Because you have to start really looking at the numbers and how what you're eating is impacting losing the weight, if that, or changing your body composition if that's what you're looking for. The other thing we go into is you got to detox, right? I hear this, I've seen this for decades. I have to detox my body. I'm going on a detox. Who wants to join me? So our bodies have natural detox mechanism, but I will admit that sometimes things get a little jammed up. And instead of looking for detoxes, I want us to look at what is your overall nutrition intake. And for many people, that's hard. Many people are like, I don't know what I eat. That's okay. That's when you write shit down. And if you're like, I don't like to write things down, all right, write down one thing. Write down how much protein you're getting in, or write down how many things you eat that aren't on, will never be on the healthy food list, right? You know, how many times a day are you eating off your kid's plate? Write that down. How many times are you shoving cookies in your mouth? Write that down. How many times are you having fast food a week? Write that down, right? So if you don't want to write down everything, let's just write down some of the things that you know are not the path to health. And let's see if we can start to reduce that. And that might be what we do as our detox, okay? But the other thing is that we have to start looking at, is our body processing the foods that we eat? You know, I see it a lot. You know, one of my clients, you know, her nutrition couldn't get any cleaner, right? She was just like a freaking textbook of clean eating, but she wasn't digesting it. You know, she was constipated. She can only eat a certain amount of food before her stomach was like, oh no, I can't eat anymore. And it was because of her gut health. And, you know, some doctors, it's starting to get a little bit more mainstream, but a lot of doctors for a long time just thought that was bunk. So if you're eating foods that make you feel bloated, gassy, I want you to look at like how many like probiotic foods are you eating? Because this is like, if my gut is just junk and it's just filled with bad bacteria, if I've been on like antibiotics for decades, right? Here's where you have to start looking at it, looking at your probiotic food. So these are like fermented foods. This isn't just Activia. Like, I'm not even gonna start. Like, don't even get me down that rabbit hole. This is like pure Greek yogurt, like fermented foods like sauerkrauts, kombucha, but be mindful of kombucha because a lot of it has a lot of sugar in it. Um, uh, Kimchi, those kind of fermented foods can really help with that overall nutrition. You know, in a pinch, a probiotic supplement, but which leads me into this next place. I feel that there is a place for supplements, but supplements can't replace a healthy diet. You know, supplements are meant to complement, not replace a balanced diet, right? I can't outrun my food. I can't. As many of you want to like sprint past your food and just be like, I'm just gonna pop this magic pill and boom, my world is gonna be perfect, like Cinderella. I don't think Cinderella popped pills, but um she put on a magic slipper. So yeah, so think pills are like as that magic slipper. They're not the shortcuts to health. They fill in the gaps where primary nutrition is underserving, or it's a short-term fix to get you healed. So I really feel like, you know, there are a handful of supplements that I'm like, yes, absolutely, these should be included in your nutrition. But again, if I'm a healthy person and I want everyone should be getting a physical at least once a year from a general practitioner and seeing their guide. So it's like vitamin D, magnesium, a quality multivitamin, omega 3s, 6 and 9s, and creatine. Those are like the 4 things that most women need on a regular basis. That is separate from their food. All right. So thanks for hanging with me. We are halfway through this, and I hope that like some of these are like starting to help you, get a better fix on resolutions. But as we, work our way through this list, like I'm not looking for you to be perfect. I'm looking about progress, right? And so as you're kind of listening here to all of these things, I want you to be like, all right, what am I doing? And you're like, yeah, all right, I'm already doing that. Good, girl, look at me, I'm crushed. But then I want you to say, what am I not doing? And what feels easy for me as we go through this list? And I will have, I created a whole download for you for like 24 ways to crush your goals in 2024. So while you're listening to this, I created a supplement to this podcast that I think many of you will find very beneficial. All right. So then I move on to treats. And, if you've been following me for a while, listening to this podcast for a while, I am not that girl who's going to be like, you must never, ever, ever let sugar hit your lips. Like a moment on the lips is a lifetime on the hips. I will never say that to you because I know firsthand what it's like, but I've also seen my clients. Like it's just like you're like a ticking time bomb. It's like you're like telling someone to not have fun food or drink or be social. It's like a ticking time bomb. It's gonna blow up in your face. And I've seen it multiple times. So I like to think about it as like the 80-20 rule. And I say this all the time. Many of you are not at that age where like just shit just happens. We're in that age where we can plan for it a lot better. So, I sit down every Sunday and I'm like, well, what's going on for the week? And I'm like, okay, on Friday, I'm going out to lunch with a bunch of my girlfriends. Okay, I am going to make sure that Monday through Thursday, my food looks really good. So that on Friday, I can go have a glass of wine and a fun appetizer with my girlfriends and not be like, oh my, on the drive home, oh my God, I blew it. I need to just go to the gym stat and burn 5 million calories, right? So start to think about like, I like to think about it as a calorie budget. So that if, again, making this number up. So if my budget for the week was 14,000 calories, I know that I'm going to spend more money on the 15th than I normally do. And I want you to if I start thinking about it in that way, it's no longer these like big, like spikes and flows. It's like if this was an ocean, it's like smooth, calm waves versus like freaking tidal waves that take you out for days and weeks on end. In order for a workout to be good, it needs to be a certain amount of time. And I get that. I used to be that way. Oh, if my workout was in 90 minutes, why go? I would prefer a 2-hour workout. And now, there's I've been looking, and if you found it, please share with me, but there's no research out there that shows that duration has to be the workout, right? It's just such a, I was caught in such like the bodybuilding space for so long. And, I'm grateful there's one of my mentors really helped me break me of this. And it was very freeing for me. And hopefully this conversation might be an eye opener for you. It might be a little freeing for you. That short, intense workouts can be just as effective for fitness and weight loss. And, who has the hours to spare anymore? I'm not in my 20s and 30s anymore. And, I don't have I don't have kids. So yeah, you're like, Kim, you don't have kids. You've got all the time in the world. Yeah, you're probably right. But do I want to have all the time in the world to go to the gym? No. Right? There's other things I'd rather do with my life. Record this podcast. Sit on my ass, watch a Hallmark movie. But it's all about being efficient. And one of the big ways that I really saw this is in the CrossFit, right? CrossFit, for all the things you can say about CrossFit, most of their workouts last 20 minutes. And they just like, they found a way to make them like quick and to the point. And so that's where I've been landing. And it has just been so freeing that, yeah, there are times that my workouts last a little longer. Yeah, absolutely. But for the most part, my workouts are for the workouts, for the bulk of time, my workouts are a lot less intense, right? They're not as long, they're not as hard as they used to be back in the day. All right, so going back here, let's see. Sorry, just lost my train of thought. Back here. One of the before I move on, one of the big things I've found with this is sprinting. And usually in my Pick Our Magic Society, I have the girls sprint probably like 2 to 3 times a week, and it's like 15 minutes. And sprinting isn't like, well, how fast? You decide that, I'm not asking you to be what's her name? Like Allison Felix, right? She's fabulous. But I'm saying run fast, run as fast as you can, run like someone stole something from you, and then catch your breath and then go again. All right, this one, I asked as I was kind of prepping for this podcast, I asked people, I'm like, hey, can you talk to me about what you feel is what you feel is like some of the myths. And this one kind of took me by surprise. And one of the things that people said was drinking water during the workout. And I was like, I was just like, what? I had never heard this one before. So if you've heard this one before, do me a favor and say, yeah, I've heard that. And it's kind of weird. So anyway, I never heard this. And so actually staying hydrated during your workout is essential, especially if you're someone who's listening and you're one of those like long distance runners. You need that fuel so that you're not cramping. You don't just hit the wall at, 10 miles in to like a 20-mile run. But even if I'm just at the gym and I'm just on a treadmill for 30 minutes, you need that water in there, because water is your workout bestie. It improves your energy levels, performance. If I'm sweating, it helps me to, mitigate the water that's leaving my body as I bring water in. So keep that water bottle handy during your workouts. All right. I don't know where this myth came from, but that's definitely something that needs to G O. All right, I got 2 more. Hang with me, friends. 2 more, and then we are done. All right, crunches. Wah! Crunches give you a flat stomach. Okay. I see it all the time, right? People are like, I need to do all the ab exercises in order to get the abs. If you have a layer of fat on top of your abs, that's like saying, hey, hold this pencil and you will get abs. Ah! All right, friends. So this is how it works. Underneath my muscle, underneath the fat, I have muscle. And crunches, as much as they feel really good, kind of like sweat feels really good, crunches are not going to give me the abs. What abs do, what their true function of abs is to keep your upper body from falling into your lower body. All right. They're to help you learn how to manage, moving my upper body into my lower body and move my lower body into my upper body without me just like collapsing. That's the main job of your core, not like abs. That's a byproduct. So crunches, sure, they have their place. However, there are other exercises like planks, leg raises, even yoga, Pilates that'll help you with a better torso, because it'll teach you how to control your core in motion, right? Because I don't ever see anything in life with me crunching, doing the crunches, right? When I'm out in the world, I'm not moving in that fashion, if you will. So that, and the other thing about abs is that, as much as people say abs in the kitchen, yeah, absolutely. And in over 40, abs are made by our hormones, right? A lot of that belly fat comes from a lot of that belly fat comes from hormones. And I have a whole podcast all about belly fat, and we can talk deeper and deeper about belly fat on that podcast. And then here's the last one I want to share that we touched about it on strength training way back when, but muscle does not turn to fat if you stop working out. Muscle and fat are 2 very different tissues. What you are seeing when you think muscle goes to fat is what you're seeing is that your muscle without muscle tone. So the flab that you're seeing isn't fat, it is untoned muscle. And so when we go back to what we talked about strength training, if I'm losing 3 to 5% of my muscle every decade, and so say I'm 35, at 45 I might start to see something like that. If I still don't do anything from 45 to 55, I'm definitely going to see something. From 55 to 65, I'm definitely going to see something. And then at age 65, I'm for sure going to see something if I don't do something about this. Okay. So it's not that muscle turns to fat, it's just you're looking at untoned muscle. And for everyone who wants to tone up, that is the anti-tone of your muscle. So I hope that everything I gave you here was very enlightening, that you were able to be like, wow, I didn't know that, I didn't realize this. And if there's other things you want to talk about, do me a favor, hit me up. I always want to make sure that you are well educated, because there's a lot of malarkey running around the interwebs, the internet, and cocktail parties. So if you've liked what you heard, I got 24 more ways to help you crush your goals in 2024. If you'd like a copy, do me a favor, pop down into the show notes and grab yourself the link. Other than that, here's to an awesome 2024. Thank you so much for being an amazing listener. Thank you so much for just tuning in. And if there is somebody who needs to share this, absolutely do me a favor and hit them up with this. The more, the merrier. Don't keep this to yourself, ladies. All right. Have a magical day, and I will talk to you in 2024.